Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where they have heard the Sax read. I don't know if you guys have heard the Sax read, but we are big on ball placement and ball security, and Sax has got you covered. Listen to the Cover 3 podcast.
I kid you not. I heard the reaction pod. I went and listened to it, and I heard you talk about Sax. I swear this is not a paid endorsement, but if they want to send some free product our way, since they are a sponsor now, I'd love to see it. I texted my 3 high school buddies that, like, we go skiing every year. We take a yearly trip. Like, we're tight. I said, you guys have to get some Sax. They're a game changer.
I'm also wearing a Sax shirt right now. That was not intentional. Somebody in the tailgate mentioned it. Like shirts, shorts, they got a whole line of stuff, good, cooling, breathable stuff. I mean, they are a sponsor, so I don't feel bad giving them the extra love right here on YouTube as well.
I had to knock out 2 ad reads this morning, and the one had like the worst copy directives I've ever seen. And I was like, I don't really know what to do with this. It took me like 12 minutes to knock this thing out. And basically just devolved into me talking smack about you guys' fantasy teams and how mine's dependable. And the other one was just like super easy and great. So we'll see which one they go with. Or maybe
yeah, we
I'm not wearing.
I'll send you the raw if you want 12 minutes just hilarity. There's a.
Oh yeah, actually that would be pretty good.
Mikey's got some pretty good editing to do on that one.
All right, lots to get to today, including our first week 1 edition of Big Game Breakdown. And a note here, because I know that some of you that are watching on YouTube and starting to get used to our Tuesday show on CBS Sports Network, our Wednesday show here on YouTube. Of course, they're both pushed to YouTube, both pushed wherever you get your podcast. Tuesday show from here on out will be a little Big Ten focused. So if you want like the best Big Ten games broken down, we're going to handle that on Tuesdays. Then on Wednesdays, we are going to handle more games that we would always have as part of Big Game Breakdown. So that's why you see right here, Georgia-Clemson, Miami at Florida, Notre Dame at Texas A&M will be headlining our Big Game Breakdown portion of today. If you want to go and get Penn State, West Virginia, and USC, LSU, we gave those a really good breakdown on the CBS Sports Network show. This is good news for you, Cover 3 listeners and viewers. It is just more time for us to break down the very biggest games of the week. Again, those Tuesday CBS Sports Network shows will be a chance for us to tackle the Big Ten games, and then we'll do the other ones here on YouTube on the pod side on Wednesdays. So before we get to that full run, Danny wanted to get this on the CBS Sports Network show. I mean, Danny was like, why in the world does the A Block not have an opportunity for us to talk about the Connor Stallions doc? So Danny, let's get it started.
Uh-oh.
No, my printer is running. I muted my own mic on purpose. I didn't want you guys to hear the printer in the background. I'm
printing these receipts.
1-0 versus the mute. I'm 1-0 versus the mute early.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it because I watched it at 3 a.m. The night it was released. I couldn't sleep, flipped it on. I was like, oh, man, am I fired up about this. I have been, I feel like we've all talked about it pretty rationally, maybe even probably downplayed it some.
Sure.
I am more upset by what transpired because I always gave Harbaugh a sliver of doubt. Like, okay, there's a chance he didn't know. He's the guy, you see some coaches are figureheads that delegate a lot of the responsibilities. I think he absolutely knew. I also was kind of curious to see, hey, is Connor Stallions going to really open up and kind of put it out there and say, I screwed up? And I did cross the line. No, we didn't see that. In fact, he brazenly was like talking about what he did. The thing that annoyed me the most is this kind of cat and mouse game that continues to play out. And it starts with Harbaugh at the top, who's always been like, we didn't do it. We haven't cheated. We've done anything that anybody else hasn't done. So it's made me more vocal in saying Michigan deserves an asterisk. Michigan deserves the conversation. They deserve the accusations. They deserve whatever the NCAA throws at them. And I'm okay with it.
But like the
NCAA already punished them.
No, the NCAA hasn't punished them yet.
Exactly.
The Big Ten.
There was a suspension
they-
at the end of last season. I don't know if you remember it.
That was a Big Ten suspension for
Oh,
violation.
okay, true. Yeah,
Sportsmanship policy.
damn. Oh, well.
Yeah.
So it's like there is some, they did have to go win games without Connor Stallions and without Jim Harbaugh against Penn State and Ohio State.
Agreed. Now, this is what I want to point out, because I think this is where we all got duped into thinking like, oh, that proved they didn't need them. The record before and after is pretty glaring. But how many times do we talk about what a rivalry game win means for programs as it pertains to recruiting, perception of the program? So the first win against Ohio State, the second when Ohio State came, they were cheating their balls off and they had the signals and it benefited them. The same with Penn State, same with every other team they were running through in the Big Ten along the way to this magical run that they had this past season, so that their recruiting classes improve, their, the perception of them improves. How about their self-belief? Like, I don't think the players probably didn't know much, although they were all going like this. Hey, here comes a signal. Like, all of that, I think, matters, so that when you do get to that level, you have a better team, you're more confident because you've been beating them. And so I think it does play in. Like, the fact that they won, yes, it's impressive, but it doesn't exonerate them and mean that it didn't mean anything along the way.
Okay.
All right.
I'm just over it. Like
Same.
they won after they got caught. Like I think everybody cheats like nonstop. So I just
To that level.
yeah. Not
You do
no,
that.
I don't know.
No,
if everybody
not
that's
to, yeah.
I think teams. I said this a long time ago. I think teams hack each other's video stuff. I just think there's so much money at stake. If you don't think these guys are cheating like crazy, I just think you're wrong. I mean, like today I was reading a Thamel piece. Pat Narduzzi has a $40 million buyout. Like, guys, think about the kind of money at stake here.
And
I think everybody cheats. Like,
so here's what discourages me the most. And we've seen this with the Astros, we've seen this with the Patriots, we've seen this with other cheaters that have gotten away with it. At the end of the documentary, Connor Stallions says, if I go back and do it all over again, I would. 100%. If you're Jim Harbaugh, if I could go back and over it all, I would. Like, and if I was him, I would too. He got a raise and got a better gig at the in the NFL, like a $15 million a year gig. Like, why wouldn't you do it? Same thing with steroids. Why wouldn't you try to take PEDs? So what if you get a half-year suspension, you got a $200 million deal? Like, that's to me what's the point, the moral of the story is you should be trying to cheat, which is a sad moral of the story, right? That's not what we want our sports to be about. And yet we see it time and time, they're rewarded for it. And you know who else probably says do it again? The Big Ten,
every Michigan fan,
or Fox, or whoever is calling the shots and in charge of people making decisions, because they realize people want to watch that team. Did you find Connor Stallions to be a sympathetic figure? Sympathetic, like I want to punch him in the face? Like, is that what you mean? or you felt sad for him? Or you not in the least. No. I thought it was him. There's a really good debate in my mind, like who I would want to punch more, either him or the Bishop Sycamore coach. Remember that guy? Because there's a lot of main character syndrome going on there. Like this whole thing is about me. And I am the hero. And now I'm the tragic hero. And now let's talk about all the things that drew me to Michigan. And let's look at the game ball. Hey, let's look at this game ball that I got. And I just found that that's from the perspective of trying to use a documentary. And as documentaries have become more and more popular.
Can we not call it a documentary?
Yeah, can we just call it an infomercial?
Yeah, dude. Like, this is not a documentary.
Okay.
Max in the chat. Danny used to get really mad when the WWE refs got distracted before the cheaters used the steel chair.
That's right.
Come on.
He's right there, ref. What are you doing?
Did you guys learn anything new? I guess I
didn't watch it.
I didn't really learn anything new. I don't like the glaring, the dynamic of they cheated and they don't care. And they're going to do this cat and mouse game. Like, I don't recall being on the sideline at the Central Michigan game. This picture, it doesn't look like me. Like that, the flaunting of that really bothered me. One thing I didn't know Or I guess I did, but I didn't realize the extent of it was about him getting his start at Navy. I'm sure Ken Niumatalolo is probably watching that being like, ooh, hope nobody digs into our past and starts looking at it. Although I do think he didn't have the resources there to be sending advanced scouts. I think it was probably more in the traditional,
Frankly, I want my Navy stealing signs. And my Army
Hey.
and my Air Force and my Marines.
It's called
I want them stealing everything
counterintelligence.
that-
It's how America wins wars.
Yeah.
Come on. All right. So I need to move this up because I missed this yesterday. But I believe that you added it, but we got ourselves a situation with the Charlotte 49ers.
Yeah, my BS detector is going off here like crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I don't cover Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte's a program. It's an interesting program. So if you watch Biff Poggi's press conference yesterday, it's funky. It's on somebody has the clip on their Twitter.
I've got a quote right here.
Hunter Bailey on Twitter is probably like the only beat writer Charlotte has. I think he's at Charlotte Observer maybe, but he has the clip on his Twitter.
All right, so here's the quote. We
yeah.
have come out of camp pretty banged up, unfortunately. Poggi told reporters on Tuesday, we have definitely 8 and probably 9 starters injured. I'm not great at math, but it is getting close to 50%. When you open with JMU, a program that's 19-4 over the last couple of years, you can get a little overzealous. You have to balance between that callous that you want the players to have and getting them healthy. I get an F- on that for camp. He gave himself an F- and said 50% of his roster is hurt.
Well, he also was like, it's probably going to take 3 weeks for all of them to get healthy.
Yeah, he said week 4 will be the first time. And that's, I mean, is he setting expectations low because they're playing JMU in North Carolina in the first 2 weeks of the year?
Okay. Do you know what my mind immediately went to?
Betting?
Suspensions.
Oh.
So here's the thing. I went and listened to the Gold Rush podcast, which is what Hunter Bailey does with, I forgot the 2 other hosts. Apologies. Just to see if I can get some more context on this. And they said that these practices were not more physical than what the prior coach ran. And they weren't aware of a bunch of guys being out as of like a week ago. Do you think you would go crazy physical in the week leading up to your opening game?
Yes.
Do you think that somehow coincidentally all the injuries are going to take exactly 3 weeks? Everybody's got the exact same recovery time for their injuries? Matlock once said, when I hear things don't make sense, I try to figure out reasons why they might make sense.
Hell yeah, Matlock reference number 1.
Yeah.
Of the season.
And I'm like, dude, okay, so we just happened to get a bunch of 3-week injuries all at the same time in game week prep. Dan, you ever heard of that?
No.
Happened with the Gators a lot.
Monitoring the situation here. I don't think, and he failed to name any of the players as well.
So
maybe they were all riding on like a huge golf cart and like just like all got ankle sprain. Like that could be explained. Like everybody 3 weeks.
I don't know. This could get me in trouble. I don't know if I should say it. It's clearly a joke. I just want to put that disclaimer out there. Biff Poggi, one of the biggest responsibilities he has is to raise money for that football program. So maybe he's trying to move the line, and then Charlotte's going to come in with heavy action on the 49ers. Because that line moved like 3 points yesterday, man. So he's got a field goal value based on this press conference. He is going to build a new football facility because of this. It's a joke.
Maybe they are hurt. I'm not trying to call Biff Poggi a liar, but to me, I don't know.
Okay, so
half your starters are out with exactly 3-week recovery timelines.
Okay, but your BS is on the reasoning. You are not expecting, as Tom hacked Ocean's 14 here, is like, and now we're going to come back with big. You don't think that all of a sudden these 8 to 9 starters are going to be magically healed in time for week 1, right?
I do not. I mean, like, what is the like? What's the benefit of doing this? Like it's kind of Lou Holtzian in a way, but like why?
I was leaning more towards Chip's line of thinking, like the sandbagging. We have no chance. You kind of help the perception. You set the bar really low. The expectations are there. Well, we have no chance to win. If you win, great. You shock the world. It makes you look better. If you lose, you're like, you know what? We didn't have anybody. We were playing against James Madison and UNC. So, we had no chance. So you kind of have a built-in excuse, so to speak. And it's sort of that mental mind, warfare that takes place, the ultimate sandbagging.
Hedge fund Biff Poggi, market manipulator.
Yeah. Yeah, but like then you're essentially you're gonna be like, oh, let's say they play. Because like
they're banged up. They're so hurt.
Not gonna beat
They're gutting it out.
Yeah.
My guys are.
If you're not 8 or 9 starters, Charlotte's not gonna beat JMU. Right.
No.
So whoa. I mean, JMU lost a whole hell of a lot from that team last year.
Made a good hire though.
He got a much better coach than Biff Poggi. I mean, that guy's Chesney's won every single stop he's ever been at.
That is true. Biff Poggi's giving himself F minuses. So
yeah. All right.
That was weird to me. I just thought I would spotlight that.
No, listen, it's a
Chip's totally taking the Charlotte money line tomorrow. I can see it in his eyes.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if the 49ers rise up and overcome adversity in Jerry Richardson Stadium?
Josh says, why are we worried about who's playing for Charlotte? Because we like interesting stuff here on this show. We don't cover the whole 10 teams every single week. If you want like pre-made, only make a show for VOD, only talk about the same 14 teams, there's shows for you. This ain't it.
There are. One more little bit of news and headline before we hit a break and start to get into big game breakdown. We discussed last week about the potential of the NCAA trying to push through an elimination of the spring transfer portal. One thing that Bud Elliott mentioned was he thought that if they went to a 30-day window and only one window, that would be extremely problematic. And dadgummit, that is exactly what they're recommending. One single winter window that begins right after the conference championships and wraps up in early January. This is where I remind you that the current college football calendar has a national championship on January 20th. Yikes. We also have, but I'll throw this back to you since, you started to give us a little bit. I've got some good responses also, thanks to 24/7 Sports Matt Zenitz, who has a great story. He did some anonymous coaching surveys on 247sports.com that you should go check out. But now that the news, has been out there for a little bit, what sort of feedback or what are you sensing in terms of the reaction from coaches and staffers on this recommendation?
Well, I will let you guys know that portal catch-up show that we have on December 16th is going to be a banger because I am not changing my vacation request, which I've already put in for the 9th to the 13th in December. So I'll be hitting the slopes somewhere, and we will catch up on the 16th in December. I mean, look, coaches aren't really super happy that they have to deal with this over Christmas. I think that their schedules are already pretty insane. So some will complain, but some will be like, hey, it's nice to have your roster locked in come April. Like that, the games you had to play with some of like the spring practice stuff and playing time promises and stuff in spring was kind of annoying. I think for a lot of coaches to get people to stay around. So it's definitely less work for the staffers overall, but it does make the holiday season pretty insane.
No time for shopping.
In the survey, one of the things, there did seem to be a strong support for eliminating the spring window. Not an overwhelming and not a majority of support, but the idea that you're getting rid of the spring window of the dozens, 51 different coaches and staffers that Zenitz polled, you did have a lot of support there. The thing that stood out to me about the poll was the lowest response was leave everything status quo. Mm-hmm. Everyone can agree that the current calendar as it comes to the transfer portal is jacked. And no one can agree. We've got no majority exactly on how to fix it.
I guarantee you this, though. Like, after they do change the rules, wait another 8 months and poll all the coaches, and they'll tell you that they got to get rid of whatever the current situation is, because that is how coaches are. Whatever the current situation is absolutely untenable. We need to change it.
What if one suggestion that was in there that was not mentioned when you just had like the offer other feedback? This is from the Zenit story. You can go check it out at 247sports.com. Another high-ranking Power 4 personnel official had a different idea that he views as a good solution. Move the portal to February after all the games and all the coach moves, and don't make transfers be full-time students in the spring, but they can participate in spring practice. He said 1 window after the season is over, just like the NFL.
Yes.
Can you get the schools to agree to that? Like allowing players to come and practice and do all that stuff, but not have to go to class?
Who cares about the schools? We're not even doing this for academics anymore.
Wow.
But you are right though, Tom. They would probably push back because that's what I was thinking. I was looking at the NFL calendar. You know, when free agency opens, it's March 12th. It's like exactly 1 month after the Super Bowl. So you'd give players some time to catch their breath. They don't make emotional reactions, jump in the portal. The team, they can evaluate their own talent. They can recruit the guys they want to keep. They can cut loose the guys they don't. They can cut guys. Like, I just think that makes the most sense. But there is the academic issue, which comes into play. But if they were willing to do that, to let them, you know, either enroll in their own class and they're not tied to the school that way, or not make them go to class in the spring, that'd probably be the best solution that's out there.
One I think could pass muster is graduate transfers only in the winter window. Keep the spring window for undergraduate transfers.
Yeah.
I think if you actually care about some of the players.
Would you do it in May or would you do it in February? Because to me, the reason I read that quote, now I don't want to listen, a VIP subscription is what you have to have if you want to be able to be keeping up with everything at 247sports.com. So definitely get that on lock for the 2024 season. And this is one of those stories you get access to. But I wanted to read that quote because of all the suggestions that came from coaches, that one to me made the most, again, put academics to the side, the most football sense in terms of roster management. If we totally ignore the school, 1 window in February, you know, set up kind of like that seems the most fair and equitable in terms of the competition among teams for players.
The other, was it a proposal or is it the rule that the players who have 4 games and want a red shirt, they're going to be allowed to play in conference championship game, playoff games, and bowl appearances, and those won't count against the 4 games that they used. I think that's a really smart rule.
It's currently a recommendation. That one seems like it's going to pass.
It should be a
always do bowls, right?
I don't know.
I thought they could always do bowls. Maybe I'm wrong.
Either way, I think it makes sense to allow them to do both, you know, to let them play in those postseason games, especially with, you know, some of the attrition you're going to see where there would be a temptation for coaches to burn that red shirt because you might need a young player, you know, and then hopefully you avoid the situation where you've got a Mikey Keene. Where was he at UCF when he sat out the conference championship game because he wanted to transfer and he could have played? Like, you'll avoid some of those situations.
You know, this is a non sequitur. Our CBS Sports college ball homepage is looking good.
Right.
I'm not showing up here, but my camera.
You're a little
frozen.
stuck.
Bud's frozen.
But you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
All right,
perfectly.
let's keep rolling with it, I guess. I don't know what's going on with the camera.
Bud's
Well, hey.
taking his clothes off right now. He's like, well, they can't see me anyway.
He's about to show you the latest Saks products. We'll hit a break, see if he's
Produce
unfrozen.
skin line.
Yeah. we'll hit a break.
I'm
Come
gonna
back
stop
time.
Cam and reignite Cam. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Oh,
Coming
wow,
up on the other side, we get into big game breakdown, starting with the kickoff game in Atlanta between Georgia and Clemson, plus Miami, Florida, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and more. Next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, Tom Fornelli, Danny's chair, and I think we've got Bud back.
There he is.
There
By the way, the CBS homepage, college football homepage, it's like basically a personal ad for Tom Fornelli. I mean, all I see is these articles written up by Tom Fornelli. His name featured on there.
They put me to work.
Yes, they do. It's that time of year, man. All right.
I had a great day off yesterday.
On Wednesdays.
What'd you shoot?
Nothing. I had
he
HQ hits, a TV show, power went out. It was just my day off.
On Wednesdays, we like to take a deeper dive into some of the biggest games of the weekends, take you inside the matchup. Picks, that's for Thursday. This is when you get educated. We call it Big Game Breakdown. We begin with the showdown, noon Eastern time in Atlanta, the Aflac kickoff between Georgia and Clemson. We don't have to go that far back to find the last neutral site Southeastern-based kickoff game between these two. Played a real slobber knocker a couple years ago. Georgia winning that game close and low scoring. Danny, as we look at this one, there is the number one team in the country almost always goes out there and wins their season opener. Doesn't happen all that often that they're going to get tripped up along the way. Number one team is the number one team for a reason. So if you were to look at this one from Georgia, is there any reason to think that that trend is going to break? What about the Georgia Bulldogs do you think we will learn from the matchup with Clemson?
I think you'll see a defense to be really good. I think you'll see an offense that is going to try to find an identity, post Brock Bowers, post Ladd McConkey. Like, that's what I'm most curious to see how it unfolds. And by the way, I think it'll be against a really good Clemson defense. Probably one of the better defenses they'll face. So, because I think we can trust Georgia, right? They've got a track record of being able to dominate almost anyone they've faced in the regular season so far. I would expect them to, have the edge along both lines of scrimmage. But I do think the challenge and the thing that I'm most watching to see, and how, if you were looking for a script of how this game would be close, I think it's Clemson's defense holding this Georgia offense in check while they're trying to figure out, is Trevor Etienne, is he playing, first of all?
Yeah.
What does he look like if he does? And they have weapons, but it's sort of who becomes, because I really felt like those were two security blankets for Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett before that. Like, I go back to the Auburn game on the road when it's kind of like, ooh, this doesn't look so good. And then all of a sudden, Brock Bowers, Carson Beck just starts finding him and just starts drilling, and it just opens up everything. I'm curious to see who that guy is for Georgia's offense.
For me, I mean, the biggest question mark for me going into this game, offensively, what can we realistically expect from Clemson against this Georgia team? I do think I have to see it before I come to any conclusions, but I have heard from a lot of people that have some questions about the front seven on Georgia's. Like, maybe it's not to the same kind of elite level that we're used to seeing, so maybe there's a little more wiggle room, although I still expect it'll probably be pretty dang good. My question, though, is, like, Clemson last year on a down-to-down basis, if you look at, success rate and stuff, they were good. They weren't great. But where they really suffered, and where my main concern is, which is at the quarterback position, is that, as far as explosive plays, they were awful. They had an explosive pass rate last season that ranked 121st in the nation at only 11.3%. And then they also really struggled. And again, I put this on the quarterback more than anything. Once they got into the red zone, they had trouble finishing drives. They scored 3.9 points per red zone possession last year. That ranked 115th. Maybe they improve that this season, but can I be optimistic that they're going to improve that in this game against this team? So I'm with you, Danny. If Clemson's going to stick around in this game and have a chance, defensively, they need to be on top of their game. They need to be limiting what Georgia does and keep this thing close. And hopefully, there's a mistake or a ball goes your way and you're able to take advantage of it. But if they get into a situation where they're going to have to score points, I feel like Georgia could, dog walk them.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this game because there's so many just different questions about roster building and construction and philosophy. Dabo deciding not to use the portal. Georgia used the portal for a large handful of guys this offseason. I'll start right in the middle. The guy that's going to touch the ball first. So Georgia lost Cedric Van Pran, who was one of the best centers in the country to the NFL draft. Their new guy, who they like a lot, from what I'm told, Jared Wilson, has been banged up in camp. So will he go? I assume so. How does he play? Clemson does have a really nasty defensive line, so that will matter. I think Georgia is on the very short list of teams out there that could have the best offensive line in the country this year. I think Tom and Danny's point about replacing Brock Bowers is key. If you sort of isolate the games when Bowers was hurt last year, they relied heavily on Dom Lovett. I mean, he flew over his prop stuff. So is that sort of the safety blanket for or the safety valve for Carson Beck now? Possibly. Colby Young's been dinged up with, I think, a hamstring. So to me is like their big X on the outside they can use in the red zone. I don't know what his status will be for the game. Kirby Smart declined to comment on if Etienne, the running back who they got from Florida in the offseason, is going to be suspended for his offseason driving stuff. My guess is that he does not play. Branson Robinson.
Yeah.
My Branson Robinson is out because he's dinged up. Georgia recruits absolute studs at running back. So I'm not really worried about them running the football. I am a little curious about some of the pass pro stuff because Clemson will bring some funky blitzes, and some of the blitz pickup stuff for Georgia. Like if this doesn't go well for Georgia, it's probably, you got a pretty inexperienced running back in blitz pickup situations there. And maybe Beck gets his blindside and the ball cops out. Defensively, I think Georgia is really damn good on the edges of the defensive line. And I think their linebackers are total studs. You don't let like the class 2 years ago that Georgia signed. I'm just telling you as a recruiting guy, they were physically, like materially different than any group of linebackers I've seen in a couple of years.
Is that Smale London's class?
No, it's the Wilson and the one kid from Georgia. There was like three of them, and they were all just like, whoa. So I do think there's a chance that Georgia has really, really good linebacker play. But interior defensive line, they've been really banged up, right? Brenson's had the Achilles. What's his name has had like the stress fractures in both legs. Can Clemson rush the football on these guys and really blow them off the ball on the interior? Because if they can't, I don't think you're going to win a side-to-side game necessarily against Georgia, but maybe you will because of tempo. Like Riley's more of a tempo guy normally. They were not crazy high tempo last year, probably because it's a new offense, but will Clemson crank the tempo up? Georgia's got a lot of new pieces in the secondary. I'm curious to see how those pieces mesh. Can you create some bust there? I don't know, but if Clemson can't run the football against the Georgia interior defensive line, which I think is a little bit down, partially due to injuries, then I think Clemson could be in trouble because I don't really trust Cade Klubnik to drop back 40 times if he has to. But I think Clemson's receivers are a hell of a lot better than they've been. Last year,
healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the point. Like last year, they sucked, but they also were really dinged up a lot of times. Like the guys they were running out there was like, oh, these aren't Clemson receivers. Yeah, they're in the training room. So, we'll see how much better they can be. The other key factor here is that Clemson may have 0, 1, or 2 of their starting corners for this game. Like, I don't know if Lewis and Lucas are going to play. My guess here is that they have one of the two. That's how I'm currently handicapping the game. But because they don't use the transfer portal, if they're down both, you will see true freshmen starting at corner for Clemson against Georgia. And that would be a problem for me.
You mentioned how the offense looked last year when they didn't have Brock Bowers. You know what else was different about the offense when Brock Bowers didn't play? They ran the ball better because they had Oscar Delp in there coming across on those split zones, just knocking dudes to the next level and opening up huge lanes for their running backs.
Having a huge camp, I heard.
Mm-hmm. So, of course he is. He's an awesome player.
Dogs 247 on top of the news for us always. So he's a good player, man.
Any concern about Clemson's true freshman kicker? Dabo does have a lot of field goal attempts in the way he calls red zone opportunities.
Okay, yeah, you know what? That's a good point. I have two concerns about the red zone offense: the quarterback and the guy making the calls.
I think Cade's going to have to run. I think they're going to run Cade. There has been a lot of I'm working on a Cade Klubnik story for Friday. There's a lot of conversation around the program about this. This just has to be on Cade to make the right reads and not make the boneheaded turnover. I mean, this is what
comps help him.
We'll see. Dabo says it's great. That he's the coaching staff at Clemson has loved practicing it, and they believe that this is something that can really help. But the making the right read, getting out there, not having the boneheaded turnover. This is a Clemson team that led the nation in fumbles lost. It was and so many of those were red zone or third down plays. Ball security. It just seems like as I've been digging deeper and deeper on this on the Clemson side of things, everyone's like, it's right there. Cade just has to translate it. Like he just has to go out there. The key to unlocking Cade Klubnik is not Garrett Riley. The key to unlocking Cade Klubnik is Cade Klubnik going out there and just making the right decisions because they are counting on him to use his legs. And he is athletic, and he can do that kind of stuff that Trevor or Deshaun did where you make that right read because you see space. That's a first down. It keeps a drive alive. So I'm I'm very curious. I mean, you mentioned how good Georgia is on the outside. Like maybe that goes horribly and he makes the wrong reads and gets crushed. But I think that that's going to be key. I think that will be a needed counterpart to the inside run game with Phil Maffa, who apparently is going to be a workhorse because it's not like we've got a super deep backfield right now. Not really an obvious, tandem. He had that whole Thunder Lightning thing going with Will Shipley last year. It sounds like it is going to be Maffa, running, being the bell cow for sure.
Can we get like a quote graphic of Chip out of context saying that Cade can do the stuff that Trevor and Deshaun could do? Because I just want to tweet that repeatedly during the season. Whenever Cade Klubnik screws up.
Question for you guys. More confidence in improvement from Klubnik or more confidence in improvement from Clemson's receivers?
Receivers.
Totally.
Yeah,
I don't trust Klubnik at all. I think the
I'm not a
receivers
big
have a chance
Klubnik
to be
fan.
good.
I just hope for every Clemson fan's sake that you don't see this where the helmet communications and he just turns back and he goes like this. You see those NFL quarterbacks every once in a while. They'll be like, no, I got this. No.
Did you see Kelsey wave off the Jalen Hurts audible?
Ooh, I did not.
I saw it on Twitter this morning. Like he's like, no,
What, last year, I guess?
Yeah.
No. What I said is Cade is basically Trevor and Deshaun put together.
Yeah.
And more.
But better.
Yeah,
Clip
but
it,
better.
graphic, put it out.
Cade Klubnik is basically Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson with a Johnny Manziel on top. Yeah. That's basically what I'm expecting. It would be great news if Bryant Wesco comes out and has a huge game. We'll see.
Would be nice for them, yes.
Remaining questions on them. Is Clemson's offensive line better with Matt Luke coaching it is one I got. And
I think he's a really good coach.
I think he's a really good coach. I think that their player availability on the offensive line might be a little
problematic.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. The other one there is, did they move Peter Woods to defensive end because they think he can he's awesome there and they have so much surplus depth at D tackle, or because Clemson maybe is finally not rolled perfectly with DN recruiting and lack the guys they need there? Like, I'm going to be watching that closely. Like, is Woods actually good at that spot, or does Clemson just not have DNs finally?
Both, and they're even looking at those talented defensive tackles and hoping that they're going to be better later in the year. That they're not.
Capehart can play. Like,
but I'm talking about Burley.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the freshmen and the sophomores that are a little bit deeper on the depth chart, where they would like them to come along. It doesn't sound like they're ready to go out there and dominate. Woods is ready to go and play wherever you need him on the defensive line. So, anything else on this game? Any bold predictions that are maybe not betting related, as we'll have our lock show on Thursday?
This could be a Michael Williams breakout game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Georgia's really high on him. Everything that I've read is that they're using him more as like a rusher, moving him around a little bit less. I forgot the name of the dude on the other side, but they like him as kind of more of a chess piece. Walker? Jalen Walker. Yeah.
Yeah.
This could be a Michael game.
Who does Oregon play? Idaho?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. My bold prediction is that by Sunday or Monday, Carson Beck will once again be the favorite to win the Heisman over Dylan Gabriel. Because they'll have a big game against Clemson while nobody will have watched Dylan Gabriel against Idaho.
Did you guys happen? This is off topic. Did you guys see what FanDuel's doing with the
where they make every moment more?
No, not that, but where you can bet teams that aren't playing against each other with their point total.
So this is just good bookmaking by FanDuel.
Yeah.
Offshores, like your local bookie, has had this for maybe a decade. They're just like the fantasy matchups. And I will, without saying who I'm going to take on these, if you have two edges that you think are like very small edges but are probably not bettable, and they actually align on these, it can become a complete edge.
What are your
So
Monte Carlo?
What does
so
say?
For instance, let's say that I like two team totals, okay?
Yeah.
But not really in love with them, but sort of like two leans combined to become like one decent bet.
Yeah.
If you think you have a very small edge on both and they do happen to match those two teams up, just kind of take a look at your numbers. You're like, that's actually not bad. Depending on the juice, obviously.
Like a 5% plus 5% edge, which I would take. But I'm just saying for math, like 5% plus 5%, suddenly it's a 10% edge.
I'm betting any and all 5% edges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm
More
just
like a 1 and a 1.5 equals a 2.5.
I'm just going to stick to the promos that offer any, boosts for any in-state team.
Excited about some of the stuff they're doing. This is not an ad read. Like, they're not paying me anymore to do this, but like, I want to see them leave the win totals up all year.
Yeah, and be able to jump back in on
like, I was noticing on FanDuel, they left the ACC Conference Championship odds up all year. Or sorry, all throughout the Florida State game. They just dynamically changed them. It was nice.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to another ACC team, the Miami Hurricanes. Lot of new talent, high expectations. They're headed into the swamp for a big-time in-state opener. And Riley Leonard and Mike Elko, we meet again. What happens when Notre Dame heads to Texas A&M? We'll get into all that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, and the Miami versus preseason expectations, a tale as old as time. So what happens on the field? Tom, what are you looking for? I'm not asking. I don't need a direct answer for that. Tom, where do we start with this matchup? What is it important for both of these teams to do in order to be successful in a game that odds makers have determined is going to be tight?
Yeah, I think that you need to take care. Oh God, you need to take care of the football.
Ball.
Turnovers are going to be important, blah, blah, blah. But I do think in a game like this, like, there's been a lot of love for Cam Ward, particularly from Danny down there, who is mad at me for not having him in my quarterback power rankings, which I hate to break this to you, Danny, but my newest edition of the power rankings came out this morning. It's one of those things that's on the front page of CBSSports.com. And Cam is not in the top 10 yet, because I think that as fun and as entertaining as Cam can be, he also, a lot of the entertainment factor is some of the stuff he does that he shouldn't be doing and the chances he takes. And I think that if you are Miami going on the road in this environment, in this game, it's your first game. Obviously, you want to impress. It's a huge game. Your debut. You're going to want to play well. It's just, I'm concerned that he might try to do a little too much, which could lead to problems, because I think this Florida team, like, we talk about their schedule and how hellish it is, particularly in the back end, and how it's going to be a rough season for them. And I think that narrative and that discussion kind of overshadows the fact that it's still a talented team. Like, it's not like the Gators are just pushovers. This is a game that they can win. So I think the team that does the best job of taking care of the football has a great chance to win this game. But I also think if you're Miami, because like we just talked about the Clemson Georgia game, and I'm really not trying to bring it up again just for fun, but like, Florida State lost last week. I think Clemson's probably going to lose to Georgia. I think for Miami, this is a chance to go on the road and beat an SEC team in a season in which your expectations for yourself are high, and there are high expectations for you as well, and kind of just plant the flag and say, yeah, man, we're good. We could do this. We can win this league. We could be the team getting to the playoff, getting that bye. So I think narrative-wise, it's a big chance. I think actual performance-wise, it's a big chance. On the other side, if you're Florida, again, that back of that schedule really is tough. Like, this is one of your chances to get a big win and kind of just build momentum to keep yourself, positive and confident going the rest of the year. Because if you lose this game and you know what's still coming up, and there's already the talk about your coach being on the hot seat, and losing this game certainly won't do a whole hell of a lot to help him in that aspect. Like, confidence could shrink really quickly for this team if things go bad early. So it's a huge game for both of these teams right off the bat. Mute button.
I think a lot of this comes down to where within your sort of range of ratings on Miami do you currently peg Miami of Florida, right? There's sort of like a floor and ceiling for what a team can be, just based on their talent score, their coaching, etc., which I think he probably needed to change Miami's coaching a little bit this year, because Cristobal acknowledged that he did hire an in-game decision guy. So at his presser the other day. So that is notable.
Will Mario respect him?
Now, he didn't say who it was, but
It's actually Mario in a trench coat.
If it's one of the guys who was giving him like very nervous side eye on that very like brief shot that ESPN showed to the sideline before they ran the ball instead of taking a knee, then I endorse that hire, because like those guys in the moment were like, wait, what? How close is Miami to its ceiling as a team for this year? They do have a lot of new players via the transfer portal, and they have a lot of talent. I think they're the most talented team in the ACC. Like that's a really talented team. They look the part. Nick Saban also said that Florida State looked the part. He said on game day it was a top 5 roster, height, weight, speed. So did all the guys, all the scouts who talked to Pete Thamel, right? So how well can they play together is going to be key. Like if you play this game and you're at most like both teams' ceilings, Florida's best and Miami's best, the bet is clearly Miami, in my opinion, right? Even if you're going to use like a crazy 3.5 or 3 or maybe 4 for a home field advantage for the Gators. Like I think Miami's ceiling, if you just take your, jack them up to max and put Florida at their max, I think Miami's just a much better roster. I don't know that Miami will be a better roster on Saturday, right? I don't think they'll be a better team on Saturday. You got a lot of new pieces in the secondary. We'll see how those guys play together. You have a new center. And to me, Miami is better at almost every single position on the field this year than it was last year. Not at center. The Matt Lee kid was really good. I think he's going to be a good pro. I think they have a real downgrade at center. And Florida has 2 really good D tackles. Really good. And last year, when Tennessee's kid got suspended right the night before the game, remember? That's kind of the reason the Gators won the ball game. Because Tennessee's offensive line was all jacked up, and you go into the swamp, which is a tough place to play. And Florida's D-line kind of owned them because they weren't ready. So how ready is Miami going to be to go play in a hostile environment? That's key. And can Florida – I don't know if Florida can run it on Miami. Miami secondary is probably the Death Star little, uncovered thing here. Can Graham Mertz take advantage of that?
Going back to my point, just to drive something home, because I had the stat ready and I forgot to mention it. Miami last year as an offense ranked 113th nationally in turnover rate as far as drives ending in turnovers. Out of 200 FBS quarterbacks last season who averaged at least 5 attempts per game, do you want to guess where Cam Ward ranked in whoopsie daisy rate? 156th. So it's like you're not really solving a problem there. But anyways, sorry, I just forgot to add that earlier.
What'll be interesting, because I do think Cam Ward had a lot of games where he had to kind of go YOLO, like, hey, we don't have as much talent. Now he's got better talent around him. But there's a concern for sure. Like, do you develop bad habits because you were doing that when in this game you might feel that early, like, hey, I have to make a play, but you don't have to, and you force it, and you have some of those whoopsie daisy type throws. I know it's cliche, and just like Tom said, I'll go a little bit differently, and it kind of piggybacks on what Bed said. Man, the Brent Key after post-game interview, just double redundancy there. Run the ball, man. Like, I look at that being one of the keys for whoever can establish the run. And I do think it's more imperative for Florida to be able to run the football, because with Cam Ward, you can have him run. He can escape some. So if you don't have the run game, I think that gives you a bailout option sometimes. But I do think Florida, if they can run the ball on Miami, and they can extend drives, long drives. That's what I was kind of going to ask all you guys, is kind of what pace do we think we see? Is this one where, like, Florida, do they try to run it and slow it down and milk the clock somewhat so you keep it out of some of the firepower and you keep it away from Cam Ward? Do they go faster? Same thing with Miami, who wasn't exactly quick last year. What type of tempo do they work with? But I still think it comes down to who can establish the line of scrimmage, like who's going to run the football.
Yeah, Miami ran the ball more often than Florida last year, but Florida was better at running the ball. The question is, it's like with ETN gone, are they still going to be as effective as they were in that area?
And like Montreal, if you care, I don't downgrade Florida for the loss of Montreal at all. So,
but we are talking about like a new face, the next option, somebody who is not going to be running ones, right?
Much like the Georgia conversation that we had about 20 minutes ago, like these new guys, I do think have some juice for Florida in the backfield, but how are they at the little things like blitz pickup? Miami's DC loves to blitz. That guy brings it. So
For the psychological edge, I think it goes to Florida. Like Florida's been just battered all, the 4.5 win total. They got no chance. Schedule's brutal. Miami's great, right? They're supposed
Favored
to
in 11 games.
ACC championship game. Yeah, put them in the playoffs. I do think that favors Billy Napier being able to get his team up, backs against the wall. And I do think they need to win more than Miami needs to win.
We're 89 degrees, 63% humidity, partly cloudy. Cramp game?
Oh, for sure. You will definitely see the old stretching where they're like doing this with the ankles and, pulling the calf muscles back for sure. This will be a conditioning game. You'll find out who's better conditioned and depth.
Yeah. For that reason, I would be very surprised if Florida runs tempo.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does weather and conditioning impact the decision about pace? And do you have the depth? Do you have the bodies? Do you have the offense? Or is it something you don't want to do?
So it's going to come down to which team has the lighter shade of yellow urine.
Well, I'm just saying one of these places is the home of Gatorade. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want vibes on this one,
Napier's never been a big pace guy. Miami's OC has, but they were not really pacing a lot. But at times last year they did when quarterback Van Dyke was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So if either of these teams break out pace, I would lay a pretty big number that it's Miami and not the Gators break out pace.
I've always believed this, always. And I think this will reign true even more in the helmet comm era. Mix up the pace. Like, don't do one thing or the other. Like, show different paces. It's kind of like a pitcher throwing fastball, changeup, off speed. Like, mix it up. Keep the defense guessing about what you're going to do every time. I think those teams are the ones that I would enjoy watching most and coaching most and playing for, to be honest.
Danny, any good story time with Danny? Trips to the swamp. We talked about it when EA Sports released their list. This podcast, as many of the biases get called out from time to time, we still do seem to all, as a consensus, recognize that place, when it's packed and energized, it's loud. It is a impactful home environment. Any
loudest
bad ones?
So we were 3-1-1 against the Gators in my 4 years that were there. The only loss I had was my senior year. Still bums me out to this day. I didn't play great. I was sick, not to make excuses or anything, but
I'll make one.
I will say this. Everyone asked me what the loudest, environment you've ever played in. The 93 game when Florida State ended up winning a national championship. We were at the Swamp. Game was tight. We were trailing. Huge third down, probably about our own 40-yard line, maybe 35. And it is like you could not hear anything. You couldn't, in a huddle, you couldn't call the plays that have to read your lips. But Charlie Ward hit Warwick Dunn coming out of the backfield. And in an instant, you could hear a pin drop, like just from the loudest you could hear to almost silence. And then just hearing the Florida State fans that were there. Place is nuts, man. They get after it. And they'll be like, you talk about IV cramping game. This will be one. There'll be some shots of some fans in the stands just passed out, just left it all out in the field. For
that might be a different kind of dehydration they're suffering from.
They're hurting themselves on top of all of the impacts. I like the scream. Like right before it goes silent, there's like a scream of despair.
Yeah.
Like you're loud, and then oh! All right. One more, at least before we get out of here. It is going to be the nightcap. It is going to be Notre Dame's visit to Texas A&M. But you think Riley Leonard's ready to go?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you confident in Riley Leonard's ability in this matchup?
So Taylor, who we had and calls a lot of Mountain West games, he did our Mountain West preview on our little Friday special show, which we're trying to make those be a little more evergreen because I realize like releasing a Friday show, if we're talking upcoming weekend's games, is tough. It's like, okay, like the shelf life on those is poor. So I'm trying to find 12 guests for the year that have like some meaningful commentary that will last maybe like 10 days, maybe 12 days after. So you guys can just hit save, bookmark it maybe on that kind of Sunday afternoon dead zone after you've watched us and nobody else is out yet. Fire us up and go a little back-to-back cover 3 for you. But Taylor was at the Manning camp, and I remember texting with him at the time, and he thought that Riley Leonard was moving around extremely well. So because that was something I was monitoring. Leonard, for those of you guys who don't know, his sack avoidance when healthy is like Anthony Richardson level. That guy is hard to get on the ground. He's really great natural movement. I think he's a really good player. Like, I know some of the NFL draft guys are not as high on him. For college purposes, I don't care. All right. Like, yeah. I know Connor Wegman's higher on these boards. I would take Riley Leonard over Connor Wegman for college purposes 7 days a week. All right. I just think he's a better player for the college game. I think Notre Dame's receivers are way improved. Can either side block one another? I don't know. And the Irish are going with a true freshman, a redshirt freshman, and 3 sophomores of some redshirt variety.
It's 6 career starts across the 5 offensive line starters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can have an impact. You remember Florida last year at Utah.
On the road in a loud environment too.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. But also, it's a new offense for A&M. I think they're going to be really improved on offense over what Jimbo ran last year. But Notre Dame's defense is extremely well coached. They don't beat themselves. Well, last year they only had 10 men on the field, so I guess they did then. But generally, like, Al Golden's a really good coach, man. And that's one of my highest rated corner combos in the country. They get Watts back. I think they have a lot of athleticism at linebacker. I don't know, like, who can score more? It's an interesting game.
Yeah, to me, the most interesting part of this game will be, we talked about Notre Dame's offensive line. How will that look? No experience, very loud stadium. I'd expect quite a few false starts, particularly early in the game. But for me, on the other side of the ball, like, I don't know whether it was Jimbo or Bobby last year, whoever the hell was in charge of that offense. Like, Texas A&M could not run the ball effectively last season. And with Colin Klein coming in, with just the change in that offense, what will it look like? And will they be able to run the ball? Because I think that you're going to have to figure something out against this Notre Dame defense, because I think their secondary is very good. I think that they have a good pass rush. And I think if you're going to try to slow that down and try to give your passing attack a chance, you're going to want to run the ball against this team, which they were also very good against the run. So it's not like that's a guarantee that you're going to be successful doing it. But I think you kind of have to try it and establish it and get something going. And if Colin Klein is able to bring something to this offense that makes them far more effective than they were last year, when I think they were 100 and something in success rate, like 80s in explosion rate running the ball. That's the one thing that they were able to do at Kansas State. Of course, they had, like, Will Howard and Avery Johnson, and they had some very good running backs there. And I don't know if Texas A&M quite has that same kind of personnel at the quarterback spot. It's just, I think it's a must-have for the Aggies if they want to win this game comfortably. I'm not saying Notre Dame can't lose the game if they don't run the ball well, but it's important, I think, for the Aggies. It's going to be a deciding factor.
I think one of the dynamics, and we've talked a lot about it, I'm sure everybody has, is the Mike Elko versus his former player, like, who has the edge. Riley Leonard saw those defenses every day in practice. I think it clearly favors the coach. Like, there's a higher football IQ level there that's been studying the game, that's watched a lot of football. And, granted, Riley Leonard's really good, and he's seen some of those. I just don't know if the recall is going to be there to know what to exploit, those types of things. But Bud is right. The avoidance, the dynamic running ability that Riley Leonard has, that's where I wonder if Elko has a bead on where does he like to escape the pocket. Does he like to reverse out? Does he like to step up and then go? Does he like to always go to his right? Those types of little tendencies, I think, are where Elko will have it coached up. Chip and I did our pick segment yesterday. I'm kind of nervous because I feel so good about the Aggies in this one. And I think maybe the one thing that I'm overlooking is Notre Dame's defense. Defense travels.
Or, I don't have a good answer for, like, okay, so how does Texas A&M dominate on offense?
Yeah,
right. I don't have that part.
And as much as I am
A&M by a mile. Yes. Coordinator advantage, I don't think so.
The other thing, too, is Connor Wegman. I'm a little bit concerned that he's potential guy. Like, there's players that we see short flashes, and either sometimes they get exposed over time or sometimes they can't stay healthy. He has been a guy for a couple seasons now that couldn't stay healthy. And that concerns me somewhat. There's something you can't do about injuries. It just happens. It's a rough game. But kind of curious, like what's like as much as, you know, and I know SEC media days, there were, I think Jordan Rodgers was out there saying he's the best quarterback in the SEC. And he might be in practice and in glimpses of it. But what's the best game he's had against a good opponent? Like there aren't many. You know, he played Ole Miss pretty well a couple years ago, but I don't know. So like I'm putting some faith that Connor Wegman is going to give you the best version of him, which I think is a dicey proposition just making that assumption.
On the because as Danny said, Danny and I both discussed the Elko versus Riley Leonard, both sort of leaning that if you're to match it up. But this is just the second time in an FBS game since 2000 that a quarterback and a head coach who are on the same team one year are facing off against each other the next. And it happened last season. Do you want me to give it to you, or does anyone want to take a guess? Former Cincinnati quarterback Ben Bryant led Northwestern to a 24-10 win against former Cincinnati coach Luke Fickell. So if you believe the Luke Fickell Ben Bryant theorem, lay it. I mean, Notre Dame money line. The quarterback always gets the last laugh if you believe the Ben Bryant Luke Fickell theorem. It's only happened twice since 2000, but it did just happen last year. That stat, of course, coming up, 12 hours after Danny and I were like, Elko knows this, and sees.
And the other thing too, and we mentioned this yesterday on the show, you might have perfect call. You might have the perfect coverage. You might think you have stopped his one tendency. He is pretty dynamic where he can make a couple guys miss. Like it just make them miss or run them over. Like he's pretty physical as a runner. So it's not.
Well, I mean, Notre Dame themselves know you just break his ankle. Right. So like if you're afraid that he's about to beat you, just get him a little bit hobbled.
I'd also point out, since Marcus Freeman took over, Notre Dame is 5-4 on the road. Something worth considering.
So it was they lost what?
To Louisville last year.
They
beat Duke. They lost to USC 2 years ago on the road.
They were dogs there, right?
Yeah, they lost at Ohio State the year before too, I think. But was that 2021? I can't remember honestly. But no, they're 5-4. So, it's not exactly a shocker to say a team's worse on the road, but typically you like to see top 10 kind of teams doing better than 5-4.
Any final word here on the Aggies and the Irish?
I don't know that I want to bet Notre Dame, but I don't know that Aggie should be favored by 3.
Texas A&M's offense, the big question mark. Colin Klein, who by the way was almost Notre Dame's offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
What does he have? We looked at it as a very plus value. Mike Elko did a great job, made great coordinator hires. I think whatever Texas A&M's offense is able to do against Notre Dame's defense will give us some immediate reactions to Texas A&M's offense and what Colin Klein can do. He may not have the tools. He might not have the players to do what he wants to do, but we'll see in terms of our expectations for 2024. Any other matchup-based nuggets from across week one on the top of mind?
Eastern Illinois has no idea what it's in for.
Crushed. I mean, I'm watching like some of these quarterback battles. I think the coaches are just lying and are not telling the truth about it being a real quarterback battle. But I do think there's some chance that Pitt is a real battle. And so I'm curious to see, those guys. Does Michigan I'm assuming Orji starts. That's not been reported, but that's everybody who I trust thinks that Orji's going to get the first snaps. Does Michigan actually let Warren chuck it around in the second half?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Davis Warren will play in that game.
I definitely think he's going to play. I just don't know if it's going to be just like handed off type thing. Western Kentucky, I think, might play both quarterbacks.
Oh, so it's not just going to be TJ Finley in an Iron Bowl rivalry?
I prefer Belkamp personally after what he did to me in the bowl game. So, that was
Probably both going to get knocked around a little bit. So,
let me see. I think Vandy is probably all Pavia, despite whatever it says. Northwestern.
What about the Maryland QB situation at home against UConn?
Dude, if MJ Morris can't beat out Billy Edwards, NC State fans are going to have a field day in his mentions after how he acted.
Yeah.
Just saying.
NC State, come on, give NC State fans a little more credit than that.
No.
You don't think that fan base can be petty?
Hell yes.
I mean, good.
And online. And online.
Extremely online.
Yeah.
Will Brinson's got like 85 burners, and he yells at people from all of them.
What about Northwestern, Tom? You think that's all Mike Wright, or do you think they play both?
I think I haven't really gotten any inside intel on this. I would assume it's going to be both, but I think that based on the coordinator changes and what they brought in, I think they prefer it to be Mike Wright, because I think that I think that's part of the reason Brendan Sullivan is no longer there. I think that they want it to be right, but I don't know if he has completely taken it over yet.
Do we have a feel for what the wind is going to be there?
No, it's probably going to be windy though. Like, I mean, we had 70-mile-an-hour winds knocking out my power last night, and I was out without it for a while. So, like, if it's anything like that on Saturday, they could be trouble.
Some of these sites I'm very skeptical of. 6.5-mile-an-hour winds projected at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday.
That's the thing. Like, that is, again, the lake is like the ocean, honestly. Like, you have no idea. It changes every few minutes, and it's never the same alongside the lake as it is anywhere else in the area. Like, it was 98 here yesterday, and it was about 103 at my sister's house. And it was super windy here, and it wasn't that windy there. That kind of stuff.
I'm a little curious about this Nebraska situation. They mentioned that they're going to have a plan for Heinrich Harburg and play him in the game. Like, I don't know if that means he's going to be like an H-back or something, or some kind of junk package.
Maybe if they feel like they could really use a turnover, they'll send Harburg.
Is that it as far as quarterback stuff that might be up for question? Oh, North Carolina and like, we don't know how much they're going to play both.
Oh yeah, we don't know their splits, but they're both going to play.
Matt kind of backtracked on it.
They're
in the last press. He's like, if the situation dictates it.
Yeah, the situation dictates that we need somebody to run the ball because we got a bunch of new offensive linemen and we can't get a body on them.
Yeah,
we need somebody to scoot. Hello, Connor Harrell. Let's go.
There are games tomorrow, man.
I know.
That's
I'm
awesome.
so fired up.
I know.
What was Bud? What was the Wyoming injury that caught your attention a little while back? Was it the running back?
Yeah, they lost their running back, but DJ Jones from North Carolina apparently is going to start, Chip.
Yeah, there's some the old medical tent over in Tempe starting to fill up a little bit right now too.
Saw that.
Yeah, we'll see. It's interesting. Something worth monitoring, and we'll give you. Hey, listen,
remaining vigilant.
Yeah, we remain vigilant. Hey, listen, we'll back up all this hearsay with some actual locks. That'll be Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Come hang out, because listen, the number at 11 might not be the number by the end of the day. So come hang out, watch us live, throw that little, client meeting on the calendar, and the client is the Cover 3 podcast. So let's do it. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.